I thought I would start off by asking you your 2 or 3 of the best things that Trump has done the first 100 days and 2 or 3 things that are a challenge that he needs to be thinking about or maybe could have done differently in those first 100 days. I might chime in with mine as well. Colin Reed, let's start with you.
Well, Dana, it's so nice to be back with you both. I would say, look, the President Trump promised shock and awe, and he's delivered that. It's been the first 100 days have been the most eventful of any period we've ever seen from a new president. And the thing I think that, and it's easy to lose sight of this because it's been 98, 99 days ago now, was just how quickly he hit the ground running on that cold January night. Mm-hmm. I mean, those of us who were here in D.C. attending some of these parties remember how late he was to some of these because he was busy doing the people's business.
Well, he did a press conference for 2 hours, if you remember.
Mm-hmm. And then he got to work just signing that stack of executive orders. And these were the things that he was elected to do, which was restore a sense of common sense. And all of a sudden, overnight, we're going to have a closed border. We weren't going to have men and women's sports. We were going to produce our own energy. We were going to get rid of some of these ridiculous EV mandates. We were going to do away with things like supporting government-funded gender transition surgeries for incarcerated illegal immigrants. All these things like that he talked about in the campaign trail, he got to work and he did with a stroke of his pen. I saw over the weekend Columbus Day is back. These are things that most 80% issues that the White House likes to call them, and they are. And now we're in this different period, and it looks back in that we're here in this late April. It's beautiful out. It's no longer freezing, and we're 100 days in, which 100 days is 5% of a term. So he's got a long way to go. But, of course, this will be the first major report card. But the thing he's done more than anything else is he's hit that reset. He took the country in a different direction, which when he ran last year, 70% said it was going in the wrong direction. He said, I'm going to come in and take it in a different direction. And whatever you think about him, he's certainly done that.
Anything that sticks out to you that could have been done better in the first 100 days that they need to course correct on?
Well, if he's going to give the country a hard reset, it's like resetting a computer when you've been ignoring all those requests to update. You've got all these windows and tabs open. You finally break down. You close it down. It takes a few minutes to reboot back up, and you think, oh, boy, is this ever going to come back to life?
Right.
Maybe I should have
just... You have those moments of what have I done?
Right. And everything is just roaring back to life. And I think the thing he needs to do is explain to people who are wondering, how long is this going to take before we're back and running? And talk to the people like that who are potentially checking their 401ks or wondering what's happening with the stock market, and help explain them that this plan he has is one that is going to yield benefits to them and help them understand how long it's going to take and how they'll get there. Because his voters will give him wide latitude. They're willing to take the ride with him, but it's the people in the middle, the ones who swung the election to him in 2016 and 2024 and deserted him in 2020, in 2018 and 2022 when it wasn't him but his party. They're the ones who need a little reassuring right now, as he said, because otherwise if they get the yips, he's got bigger issues between now and then.
It's so interesting. I think that's maybe my favorite word that he has coined, or not that he coined it. I guess yip is a word, but when he said that people were getting a little yippy on tariffs, I was like, it's so descriptive of how people were feeling at the time. But let's get your top 2 or 3, good and bad, of the first 100 days.
So, he stole all of mine. So
you could. Well,
no, I'm good.
You can explain why you think so.
So what I think, in everything that you said, Colin, there is something else that goes hand in hand with it. And these are the things that Trump is very good with. And that's imagery. We don't have to look any further than what happened over the weekend at the Pope's funeral, where we see him sitting down in 2 chairs facing Zelensky with the mosaic behind him, right, of the I think it was the baptism of Jesus, right? So his imagery has been very amazing, and I think it helps tell the story of what you were talking about, Colin. Let's just think about Mark Vogel coming home, right? Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh.
Remind people who he is, Salena. I know that he's somebody that you knew very well because he's from Pittsburgh, but people might have forgotten. And in fact, it wasn't top of mind for me. I do know who you're talking about, but it wasn't top of mind in terms of the first 100 days.
Yeah, that was visually for the middle of the country. That was for the middle of the country. This is a guy who was a teacher, who was in Russia, who was held there for several years. I was there when in Butler when he was holding hands with his mother at the rally in Butler when she said to him, "Please bring my son home." Mm-hmm. And he said that he goes, "I promise I will."
Yep.
Right. And he comes home. Not only is the Trump there to greet him, but he also has, Democrat and Republican congressmen and U.S. senators meeting him at the tarmac. There's a Steeler terrible towel there. There's Iron City beer. It just goes right to the center of the country. He also has a way of understanding that there's going to be a contrast. That yep. There's going to be people that are not going to like it or not understand it. And that just elevates the moment even more. And I would also say, even how he's handled, I believe it's pronounced Abriego Garcia.
Yep.
So there is this moment in Star Wars where there's this general who's an alien. And he says, "It's a trap." And I have felt the entire time as the way the Democrats have handled sort of the description of this man, and
you mean the loving Maryland father,
the loving Maryland father, and it is just slowly dripped out. That's not really the story, but there's this contrast with Democrats flying to El Salvador to go see him, and then they go to El Salvador, and he's like wearing an outfit you would go golf on, right? Like all of a sudden he doesn't look like a guy.
Well, I do think a little bit of that was stage managed by the President Bukele of El Salvador.
Oh, maybe.
Yes, I mean that's why, and they did that fake picture to make the water glasses look like they were margaritas. I mean, a lot of that, some of that was Bukele, who is a showman. So, and we don't know exactly all that Abrego Garcia said, but on that point, Salena, I look at the numbers on immigration, and the border is just so incredible.
Yeah.
The border is secure, and that happened not within the first 100 days. That would happen within the first 10 days. So that's like done, and it's hard from a communication standpoint to say, like, how do we keep getting credit for that? And Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary today, she started off the first 100 days week with an early morning briefing, and she was joined by Tom Homan, who's the border czar, and they were able to talk about those things. But when it comes to the president's numbers on immigration, they're still the highest approval that he has, but it's come down significantly. And it's not because the border being secure is getting the highest marks, bipartisan by far. It's these individual cases of people where it's like on the line.
Right.
And on Abrego Garcia, the first night, the Justice Department says, "Whoops, we made a mistake." And in my mind, I keep believing that every morning I will wake up and find out that, they fixed it.
Yeah.
They went and got him, brought him back, put him in front of an immigration judge, and now he's gone to a third-party country because he wasn't supposed to go to El Salvador. That would have been the easiest way to solve it. Now, they didn't do that. And I do think the Democrats have walked themselves into a trap.
Yes.
But there were ways for the president to get more credit for securing the border if they had just dealt with that case within the first 24 hours. They didn't do that, so we are where we are.
Right, exactly. I would completely agree with you. I think that you could have sent him, brought him back home and say, "Okay, you got to go again," because, So that those are my sort of what he's gotten right. I think his challenge going forward is how the tariff thing is covered, right? Not necessarily how people feel about it. People talk about checking their 401k all the time. I don't even know how to check my 401k, right? Yeah. And that's a terrible thing to admit. But I also don't, people almost check it like they check Twitter, because I don't do that. So I have a different perspective because of where I cover and where I live.
Yep.
So you see people like working at U.S. Steel or working in blue collar jobs who have believed that there has not been a level playing field for them in an incredibly long time. And these aren't necessarily just Republicans. These are people across the board. They either work for them, they own these kinds of companies. And so they have, I think there needs to be more stories, because if this is his biggest negative, I think there needs to be better reporting from these places, because these are the people that changed this election, right? Yeah. We can't continue to have the perspective of a Wall Street person. When this Wall Street or person said this or that, or someone gets fired from the government because there's too much bulk within the government doubling up. But I think we need to do a better job of showing how people feel about it in the places where elections matter. It does. No offense to DC and New York, but DC or New York has not decided an election ever.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe way back. I do think that I hear your point about talking to those voters. I do believe that the administration did not understand the pushback that was going to come from small and medium-sized business owners from all across the country in every state who have done blood, sweat, and tears. They might not be the blue-collar workers that you're talking about, but these are men and women who have mortgaged their homes in order to get their inventory, and now they are looking at the fact that they are going to be out of business within the next 8 weeks. Yeah. And the president has made this decision. I don't think he explained it well enough, and there was never like a big speech that said, this is where we need to go. This is the pain that's going to happen, but I'm going to be able to take care of it. Now, one thing I think is very interesting. In the first term, President Trump had some tariffs on China, okay? And that hurt America's farmers because they had contracts already, and that meant that they weren't going to be able to sell their soybeans or whatever. And the taxpayers, through Congress, gave $26 billion to America's farmers to handle the hardship. A month ago or 8 weeks ago, when the first tariff things were starting, I asked the small business administrator, Kelly Loeffler, is there a possibility that small business owners could get this kind of help if there's going to be this transition period? And frankly, the answer was, this won't be necessary because everything's going to be amazing. Everything's going to be great. And like,
that interview.
That's not how that's turning out. And that's not I wasn't putting down America. I'm just saying this is actually just literally what's happening. People that I'm talking about, the small and medium-sized business owners, the wholesalers per se, they would love to source their materials in America. That just doesn't exist. And it's going to take several years for that to happen. The other thing I want to point out, that perhaps the biggest accomplishment of Trump's first 100 days is burying his previous opponents, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, because the contrast, especially on the border, was so stark and so incredible that now you have books coming out, you're looking back and saying, oh, Joe Biden actually wasn't in charge. He wasn't mentally there. There was the infighting. There was the cover-up. They did all of these things. Oh, Joe Biden was actually he wanted to protect women from men competing in their sports. But so then who was making these decisions? And I think that Trump has buried the Democrats so far deep that they are in a hole, Colin. Let me give you a last word on this before we take a quick break. The Democrats seem to be in a hole so deep. I don't know how they get out of it. Right? I know they will eventually, but it's hard for me to imagine how that happens right now.
History is not going to be kind to the people who were responsible for the cover-up, and that's what it was. It was a cover-up around President Biden's decline, and they're going to have to answer for that. And it's going to be much more painful than just this recent book tour. There's also a role, frankly, for the mainstream media who was there every day and knew it was happening and looked the other way as well. They're going to have to answer for that as well. But no matter how you slice and dice it, those 4 years of the Biden presidency, they're going to be like the steroid era in baseball. There's always going to be an asterisk next to it because you're going to think, this guy wasn't there. He wasn't in charge. He had no idea what he was doing. Yet at the same time, there were very consequential policies that were happening out of the White House, driving this country further and further to the left, especially on energy issues, where the radical green movement was so loud and was driving this country in a place, frankly, where most people didn't want to go, especially places like Pennsylvania, among many others. This is just, they went way too far, way too fast. And by the way, that isn't been dead and buried, because those same people, those same forces are the driving force in today's Democratic Party right now in the opposition. And they'll eventually figure out where it is they're going. But right now, they don't have anyone to do it. So it's just this movement behind it.